Imagine generating over 70,000 rupees in new sustained revenue from a software investment that cost you less than 6,000. I mean, if you pitch that kind of return to a Fortune 500 board, they'll probably assume you're running a scam.
Right. Yeah. It just sounds completely made up.
Exactly. The math just sounds too good to be true. But for the millions of micro, small, and medium enterprises, the MSMEs that essentially form the bedrock of the global supply chain, that staggering margin is actually a mathematically proven reality.
It is. But the problem, though, is that the vast majority of these businesses never actually see that return. They attempt to modernize, they buy into the hype, and they end up drowning in what the industry calls tech bloat.
Tech bloat?
Yeah, tech bloat. They purchase like 12 different software subscriptions that don't communicate with one another at all. So it creates this entirely new layer of administrative nightmare that actually slows them down instead of speeding them up.
Which brings us to our core mission for today's deep dive. Whether you're an entrepreneur trying to scale without pulling your hair out, or a consultant building a market strategy, or just someone who's fascinated by the mechanics of how real-world businesses operate under the hood, we are going to build a functional, step-by-step digital roadmap for you today.
Right, because we aren't doing high-level philosophy today. We are laying out a rigorous 90-day execution plan.
Yes, a literal 90-day plan. We're going to isolate the specific low-code tools needed for inventory and CRM, and we're going to unpack the hard return on investment data that justifies this entire massive effort.
And to map all this out, we are leaning heavily on three crucial pillars of recent intel. First, we have this incredible linear regression analysis published in the May 2025 issue of the Journal of Marketing and Social Research.
A great paper.
Truly. Second, we are breaking down the massive 2025 Breaking Barriers Building Futures report, which was co-authored by the India SME Forum and Meta. That gives us empirical data from over 7,800 businesses.
Which is a huge sample size for this specific demographic.
Massive. And finally, we're weaving in ground-level commentary from the systems architects who are actually out there deploying these stacks in factories and workshops as we speak.
So I want to start by looking at where these MSMEs are currently sitting, because the initial data from that India SME Forum report paints a picture that is almost contradictory.
How so?
Well, you look at the top-line numbers, and it says 53.8% of Indian MSMEs have adopted at least one digital tool. We see that 95.4% of those digitized firms are using email. We know India is the largest user of WhatsApp for business on the planet.
Right, they're incredibly active there.
Yeah, they're on Meta, they're running Google ads, they're setting up seller accounts on ONDC and Flipkart. So on paper, it looks like this digital revolution has already been won.
Yeah, but that is what we call the illusion of digital entry. Those top-line numbers basically just represent the storefront.
The storefront.
Exactly. An MSME owner realizes the market is shifting, right? So they set up a glowing, modern digital storefront to capture attention. But if you walk past that storefront and open the door to the back office, the reality of the operation is entirely different.
So they have the entry, but no depth.
Exactly. They have achieved digital entry, but they possess zero digital depth.
Right. It's like the warehouse and the ledger are still running on technology from the 1990s. We're talking about chaotic Excel spreadsheets that completely break if you sort a column wrong.
Oh, absolutely. Or physical spiral notebooks with coffee stains covering the margin numbers and frantic phone calls to suppliers at 6 in the evening.
It's just wild. And this disconnect between the shiny digital storefront and the analog back office creates this very specific operational disease.
Yeah, the too many tools, no operating model crisis.
Break that down for us.
Well, think about it. The WhatsApp business account is bringing in customer inquiries, which is great. But because it isn't tied to a proper CRM, the follow-up relies entirely on a sales rep remembering to scroll back through their chat history on their phone.
Which is humanly impossible at scale.
Right. Or the Amazon seller account is processing orders, but because it isn't talking to the inventory ledger, the owner doesn't realize they are actually out of stock on the raw materials needed to fulfill those orders until it's just way too late.
So the business is no longer running on an efficient system at that point. It's just running on the brute force memory of the founder and their core staff.
Exactly. And that limits scale immediately. You can only brute force a business up to a certain revenue threshold before the human brain simply drops a ball.
And yet, the current trend I see everywhere is to try and fix this by just throwing artificial intelligence at the problem. I hear it constantly from founders. They say, oh, we just need to integrate an AI layer.
Which is an absolute disaster in these conditions. AI requires pristine, structured data to learn from.
Right, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. If your inventory data is a mix of guesses and outdated spreadsheets, and your customer history lives entirely inside the head of your senior floor manager, the AI algorithm has absolutely nothing to anchor itself to.
So it doesn't actually help.
Not at all. As one of the systems architects in our sources noted, adding AI to a fragmented back office doesn't create efficiency. It just creates slightly faster confusion.
Faster confusion, that is a perfectly terrifying way to put it. But wait, if an MSME founder is savvy enough to navigate the interface of a complex Instagram ad campaign or set up an ONDC seller profile, they clearly aren't averse to technology.
No, they're very adaptable.
Right. They've crossed the psychological barrier of doing business on a screen. So why does the integration completely stop at the back office door?
The research isolates the exact friction point here. It comes down to systemic overwhelm. Look at the survey responses from the report. 36.8% state that navigating and setting up operational tools is their primary challenge.
Just getting it to work is the hurdle.
Yes, and another 35.6% say they simply cannot figure out which tools are actually built for them.
So they're looking for a hammer and being handed the catalog for an industrial crane?
That's a great way to put it. I mean, put yourself in the shoes of someone running a 20-person auto components manufacturing unit in a Tier 2 city. You know your manual ledger is holding you back. So you go online and search for business operations software.
And what happens?
You are instantly bombarded by enterprise software vendors trying to sell you comprehensive ERPs.
Enterprise resource planning systems.
Right. They want you to sign up for this massive, multi-tiered sauce suite that requires a dedicated IT staff just to maintain the server permissions. An MSME does not need an enterprise transformation. They need to know what is on the shelf today and who owes them money tomorrow.
The cognitive load of trying to parse through enterprise sales pitches while simultaneously making sure your current batch of physical product gets out the door is just too high.
Exactly. So they stick with the spiral notebook. Because the spiral notebook, as flawed as it is, doesn't require a 3-month onboarding process.
But the notebook represents fragility. I mean, the data gets siloed. When margins are incredibly thin, as they are for most of these MSMEs, a single dropped order or a delayed payment can wipe out a month's profit.
Yes, the entire goal of back-office integration is to remove that fragility.
Let's talk about the actual financial upside of removing that fragility then. Because the Journal of Marketing and Social Research provides some data that genuinely made me do a double take.
The regression analysis.
Yes, they ran a linear regression analysis mapping the exact relationship between an MSME's investment in digital technology and their resulting financial turnover. And they arrived at an R-squared value of 0.978.
That is the statistical anchor of this entire conversation.
I mean, for listeners who might not remember their college stats classes, break down why that number is so shocking.
In social sciences, or really even in hard business analytics, an R-squared of 0.978 is astronomical. It essentially dictates that 97.8% of the variation in a company's turnover can be directly explained by their level of digital investment. The correlation is near perfect.
I have to challenge that, though. I mean, a 0.978 correlation in a business study usually sets off alarm bells for endogeneity.
You're wondering about the direction of the cause.
Exactly. Is the software actually causing the revenue spike, or are we just observing a scenario where a well-funded, highly successful business naturally has more capital lying around to buy software and also has more capital to hire better salespeople? The tech could just be a luxury symptom of already being rich.
It's a fair question, but the researchers controlled for baseline capital, specifically to address that bias. They stratified the data across varying levels of initial investment.
Okay, so they looked at the really small players too.
Yes, they tracked micro-enterprises that made incredibly minimal digital investments. The study specifically cites a cohort that invested only 5,986 rupees in core operational tech.
Which is nothing in the grand scheme of business expenses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And despite lacking massive capital reserves or an army of salespeople, that specific cohort generated a proportional turnover of 71,269 rupees.
Okay, so the math actually holds up across the spectrum. It's an 81% return on the margin. For every 1 rupee spent on digitization, turnover increases by 0.81 rupees.
Exactly. The report also notes that among digitized enterprises, 41.4% experienced a sales increase of 21 to 30%,
Wow.
and 69% saw at least a 10% growth in their customer base.
But the math only tells us that it works. I want to understand how it works. I mean, how does a piece of software sitting on a computer in a warehouse actually generate physical cash? Let's break down the mechanics of the ROI, starting with inventory.
The inventory ROI comes from projecting local supply into national demand. Think about it. Without a digital inventory system, your potential customer base is limited by physical proximity and human communication.
Right. Someone has to literally walk into the shop or call you.
Yes. If a buyer calls, you have to physically check the shelves. But when you digitize that inventory, you eliminate the friction of inquiry.
And the India SME Forum report notes that 60% of new e-commerce orders are now originating from Tier 3 cities and rural areas. This is a massive non-metro demand surge.
Right. So if you are a small manufacturer in Maharashtra and your inventory exists only in your floor manager's head, you are completely invisible to a buyer in Assam.
You can't even play the game.
No, you cannot list your products reliably on an aggregate network like ONDC because you can't guarantee you actually have the stock to fulfill the order.
So how does the software fix that?
An integrated digital inventory updates in real time. When a unit is sold in the physical shop, it instantly disappears from the digital marketplace. That real-time accuracy is what allows an MSME to confidently accept orders from across the country without fear of stockouts or fulfillment failures.
That makes total sense. Now, the second ROI narrative from the sources is arguably even more critical than inventory, and that is accounts receivable, getting paid.
The lifeblood of any business.
Yes. The sector is currently facing a 30 lakh crore rupee credit gap. MSMEs are suffocating because they deliver the goods, and then they wait 60, 90, sometimes 120 days to actually see the cash.
And this is exactly where a basic digital system fundamentally alters the survival trajectory of a business. When receivables are handled manually, chasing payments is a socially awkward, time-consuming nightmare.
It requires the founder to personally call their clients and basically beg for money.
Yes, and an automated digital system removes that human friction entirely. The software automatically issues the invoice. If the invoice isn't paid in 14 days, the software generates a polite, automated reminder via email or WhatsApp. At 30 days, it escalates the language.
It turns debt collection from a personal confrontation into a systemic, emotionless process. But the automation of the reminder is really only the surface-level benefit, right? The real value is what happens to the data trail once that invoice is paid.
This is the massive breakthrough. When you process your receivables digitally, you are building a verified ledger of commercial health. You are proving, with immutable data, that you have consistent flow of cash.
And why is that specific ledger so important?
Because this verified trail is the absolute prerequisite for flow-based lending.
Oh, break down the mechanics of flow-based lending for us, because this completely upends how traditional banking has treated small businesses for the last century.
Historically, if a microenterprise wanted a working capital loan to buy more raw materials, the bank underwriter asked for hard collateral. They wanted a lien on the factory equipment or a mortgage on the founder's home.
Right. They needed physical assets they could liquidate if the business defaulted.
Exactly. But most MSMEs do not own massive liquidatable assets. They lease their space, they lease their equipment.
So they get denied by the banks, and they turn to informal money lenders with extortionate interest rates just to keep the lights on.
Precisely. But flow-based lending bypasses the need for physical collateral entirely. Modern fintech lenders plug directly into the API of the MSME's cloud accounting software.
Wait, they just look at the software?
Yes. The algorithm doesn't look for a factory to repossess. It looks at the historical velocity of the cash. It sees that for the last 24 months, this specific business has consistently generated 100 invoices a month, and 95% of them are paid within 30 days.
That is fascinating.
Based purely on that digital flow of reliable revenue, the fintech will instantly offer working capital or discount the unpaid invoices for immediate cash. The software essentially transforms good bookkeeping into an unassailable credit score.
That is a profound shift. You are unlocking capital simply by organizing your operational data. So the ROI is mathematically proven, and the mechanisms of inventory scale and flow-based lending are crystal clear.
The math is undisputed.
But that brings us to the most difficult question for the founder listening to this right now. What exactly do I buy? I mean, if we know enterprise ERPs are massive overkill, what is the alternative? Let's define the exact tools. Let's build the stack.
The industry consensus advocates for deploying what they call a minimum viable stack, or MVS. It is a philosophy of deliberate constraint.
Deliberate constraint. I like that.
You curate a highly specific, lightweight group of software tools tailored strictly to your operational bottlenecks, nothing more.
So let's get really specific. What is the architecture of an MVS for a standard, say, 20-person manufacturing unit?
It consists of 5 core components. 1, cloud accounting software for verified ledgers and invoicing. 2, a dedicated inventory management module. 3, a lightweight CRM to track customer inquiries and history. 4, simple automated reporting dashboards. And 5, deep integration with WhatsApp for both customer communication and payment links.
And the beauty of that stack is that it entirely relies on low-code or no-code automation to stitch those 5 pieces together.
Exactly.
But we need to clarify what low-code actually means here, because the word automation still sounds intimidating to a lot of people. It sounds like you need to hire an expensive developer to write custom API bridges.
Not at all. Low-code platforms act as visual interpreters. You aren't writing lines of code, you're interacting with a graphical interface. Think of a dashboard with a series of simple logic rules.
Like an if-then statement.
Exactly. You select your cloud accounting software from a drop-down menu, and you select your WhatsApp business account from another. You visually map a trigger. Like, when an invoice status changes to overdue in the accounting software, trigger a pre-written message template in WhatsApp.
So the platform handles the complex API routing in the background. The MSME founder just sets the rules of the road.
Yes. It's incredibly user-friendly now.
It's kind of like setting up the ultimate restaurant expediter. In a chaotic kitchen, you have waiters shouting orders, chefs trying to read messy handwriting, and the wrong food goes to the wrong table.
Right, total chaos.
The low-code automation is the master expediter standing at the pass. The waiter inputs the order on a screen, the expediter routes the appetizer ticket specifically to the fry station and the main course ticket to the grill, and times it perfectly. No one shouts. The data just flows silently to exactly where it needs to be.
That is a much more accurate framework than the standard tech analogies. It is about silent, frictionless routing. Another vital piece of this architecture, specifically for businesses that move physical goods, is the integration of GS1 India barcoding into the inventory module.
I saw that in the reports. Why is GS1 the standard here? What makes a simple barcode so critical to this digital stack?
Because the physical product needs a universal digital identity. A GS1 barcode isn't just a random assortment of lines. It is a globally standardized data structure.
Oh, so it's not just an internal tracking number.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
When a micro enterprise operating out of a local garage registers their product with GS1 and applies that barcode, they're creating a bridge. When that product is lifted on a massive decentralized network like ONDC, the network uses that barcode to universally categorize, track, and verify the item.
So it's recognizable anywhere.
Yes. Any buyer application on the network anywhere in the country can scan or process that identity. It completely democratizes supply chain visibility.
It prevents a system where every different e-commerce platform forces you to use their own proprietary tracking numbers, which would just recreate the administrative nightmare all over again.
Exactly. That would defeat the entire purpose.
So we know what goes into the minimum viable stack, but the sources are equally aggressive about what must be kept out of it.
The discipline of rejection is paramount here. The MSME must actively refuse any software that does not solve an immediate, localized pain point.
Like what? What should they be avoiding?
They must reject predictive AI modeling platforms because they simply don't have the historic data volume to make the predictions accurate. They must reject the temptation to buy standalone HR software, standalone marketing software, and standalone project management software.
Which is how you end up with that dreaded 14 subscription bloat.
Exactly. The MVS is designed to be lean.
It reminds me of packing for a hiking trip. You know, you need a Swiss Army knife and a water bottle, which is your minimum viable stack. You do not need to pack a microwave and a portable generator, which is your enterprise ERP.
That's a perfect analogy.
And I want you, the listener, to consider your own workflows right now. How much tech bloat are you actively carrying? Because we all do it. So we have the tools identified. Now comes the hardest part: execution.
Implementation is where most of these projects die.
Right. How does a business that is already running at maximum capacity with a founder who is literally putting out 5 fires a day actually deploy this stack without bringing operations to a grinding halt? We need to lay out this 90-day execution plan.
The sources reference a framework akin to the first 100 days digital challenge, which we can distill into a highly structured 90-day roadmap. And the defining characteristic of this roadmap is its phased, sequential nature. You cannot do everything at once.
Let's start the clock. Phase 1, days 1 through 30. What is the absolute operational priority?
The priority for the first 30 days is process cleanup and segmentation. And the absolute strictest rule of Phase 1 is that the business is forbidden from purchasing or installing a single piece of software.
Wait, a digital transformation roadmap where you don't touch software for a full month? I love the counterintuitive nature of that. Why the embargo?
Because software does not fix a broken physical process. It merely accelerates it.
That makes a lot of sense.
If your current manual method for logging customer details is chaotic, like if half your staff writes private limited, another writes PET LTD, and another just writes the acronym, digitizing that will just create a database full of duplicate, unsearchable records.
Right. The adage holds true. Bad process plus new software equals faster, more permanent confusion.
Exactly. In Phase 1, the founder has to force the team to standardize reality. They have to agree on naming conventions for files and products. They need to map out exactly who is responsible for updating the ledger at the end of the day.
So it's about physical accountability first.
Yes. They
Yeah.
have to walk the factory floor and physically identify the bottlenecks. Is the delay happening because raw materials are hidden in the back room, or is it happening because the invoice wasn't mailed? You have to clean the physical house before you wire it for electricity.
Okay, so only when those operational rules are standardized and agreed upon by the staff do you cross into Phase 2, days 31 to 60.
Right. This is the deployment of the core stack. Here, you introduce the cloud accounting system and the inventory module. But the failure point in Phase 2 is rarely the technology itself. The failure point is psychology.
Resistance from the staff. I mean, they have been using the Spiral notebook for 15 years. They know exactly where everything is in the notebook. And suddenly the boss is telling them they have to type it into an iPad. That breeds massive resentment.
Which is exactly why the deployment strategy must focus obsessively on outcomes, not features. A founder should never attempt to sell their staff on the synergistic data capabilities of the cloud infrastructure.
Yeah.
The staff does not care.
They just want to do their jobs.
Yes, you sell them on the alleviation of their daily pain.
So you look the floor manager in the eye and say, this system means you will never again have to spend 2 hours physically counting boxes on a Friday night before you can go home.
Precisely. You tell the sales team, this CRM tracks our invoices automatically, which means your commission gets calculated and paid 3 days faster. You tie the technology directly to their personal well-being.
Furthermore, Phase 2 is where the concept of local implementation becomes critical, right? The sources strongly advocate against self-serve SaaS models for this demographic.
Absolutely. Simply emailing an MSME owner a login link in a tutorial video does not work. You need localized vernacular support.
The report explicitly mentions digital action centers and a new wave of local B2B SaaS implementation partners. Why is localization the make or break factor here?
Context and language. If your floor staff primarily speaks Marathi, Tamil, or Hindi, a software interface and training manual entirely in corporate English is an insurmountable barrier.
It just alienates them immediately.
Yes. The next evolution of B2B SaaS in these markets isn't just selling software. It is implementation as a product. Tech startups and state-level alliances are realizing they must send a human being to the factory floor.
So it's a white glove service.
Exactly. They install the stack, they train the staff in their native language, they configure the initial data, and they charge for the successful outcome, not just the software license.
The market is finally realizing that for MSMEs, the service is the product. Okay, so by day 60, the accounting and inventory are running on standardized processes, and the staff is on board because they see the immediate benefits. We enter Phase 3, days 61 to 90.
Phase 3 is integration and automation. The foundation is stable, so now we connect the silos.
This is where the magic happens.
Yes, we use those low-code visual triggers to link the lightweight CRM directly to WhatsApp. We activate the automated payment reminders. The systems begin communicating with each other without human intervention.
This is the moment the founder actually gets their time back. And this leads to the final step of the 90 days, which is the deployment of the analytics dashboard.
Once the data flows autonomously, the dashboard becomes the steering wheel. The founder transitions from being the chief firefighter constantly running onto the floor to solve a missing order or a delayed shipment to being an actual executive.
They can actually see the big picture.
They can open a single screen and see their true customer acquisition costs, the real-time velocity of their inventory, and their exact profit margin on a specific product line. They finally have the bandwidth to work on the business rather than in the business.
It's a brilliant 90-day architecture. But we have to address the elephant in the room. Even with a perfect plan, even with localized implementation partners, there are massive psychological and structural roadblocks hovering over this entire sector. The demographics alone present a unique challenge.
The India SME Forum report highlights that over 91% of MSME owners fall into the 45 to 54 age bracket.
So these are veteran business operators.
Exactly. They did not grow up as digital natives. They have successfully navigated decades of extreme market volatility, economic shifts, and supply chain shocks using their analog methods. They have survived.
So when someone tells them to completely change their operational model, their baseline reaction is deep skepticism.
And that skepticism is compounded by a terrifying lack of institutional awareness. The data shows that 97.3% of surveyed MSMEs are completely unaware of government schemes designed specifically to subsidize their digital upgrades.
Wait, 97%? That is a near total blackout of communication between policy and reality.
It gets more precarious. A similar percentage is entirely unaware of the draft Digital Personal Data Protection Act, or DPDP.
Oh, wow. This is a massive hidden liability. I mean, if a founder achieves digital entry by taking orders over WhatsApp, and they just copy and paste hundreds of customer phone numbers, addresses, and purchasing habits into an unsecured Excel file on a laptop that doesn't even have a password.
They aren't just disorganized.
Right. Under new data protection frameworks, they are walking into a compliance minefield that could result in business-ending fines.
And ignorance of data compliance does not protect you from the penalties.
No.
And when you sit down with these founders and actually listen to their concerns, you realize their hesitation to adopt digital systems is not rooted in stubbornness. It is rooted in a highly logical fear of exposure.
What are they most afraid of?
They are terrified of cyber fraud wiping out their bank accounts. They worry that digitizing their designs will lead to intellectual property theft. But most commonly, they fear that placing their entire supply chain on a cloud server will eventually leak their vendor pricing to their local competitors.
Their entire competitive advantage is often based on a relationship with the supplier that gives them a slight discount. If that gets exposed, they lose their margin. So the hesitation is completely rational.
Highly rational.
They're operating on such thin ice that trying a new system feels like an existential risk. I mean, it's like doing open-heart surgery on yourself while running a marathon. Which means our approach to digital literacy is fundamentally broken. We treat digital literacy like it's just about teaching someone where the export to PDFs button is.
Generic, sanitized training modules fail because they lack context. If you force a 50-year-old textile manufacturer to watch a generic English video about leveraging cloud synergies, they will tune it out immediately.
Of course they will.
Vernacular digital skilling is the only path forward. The training must be in their language, and it must use their specific industry metrics. Furthermore, the trust deficit can only be bridged through peer mentoring models.
How does peer mentoring actually execute in this environment?
It relies on local proof. If a consultant from a metro city tells an auto parts manufacturer to digitize, the manufacturer assumes the consultant doesn't understand their reality.
Where they see them as an outsider.
But if the auto parts manufacturer 2 streets over adopts the minimum viable stack, speeds up their receivables by 14 days, and visibly increases their output, the first manufacturer will walk over and ask them exactly how they did it.
Trust travels locally.
Yes. Early adopters within a specific industrial cluster become the most powerful evangelists for the technology.
Yeah. To accelerate that, the policy side has to remove the friction too. The report advocates for a consolidated MSME digital leap package.
Which is desperately needed.
How does that package work?
Well, the current bureaucratic process requires an MSME to apply for subsidies across multiple different portals, uploading the exact same documents repeatedly. A unified digital leap package would integrate directly with their existing UDIAM registration, their GST network data, and their PAN.
So it's all connected.
One portal, one click, pre-verified data. You lower the barrier to entry, you provide the vernacular local support, and you let the local peer network prove the ROI.
We have covered massive ground today. We started by dismantling the illusion of the digital storefront, exposing the fragmented, chaotic back offices that limit scale.
The sticky notes and flashlight.
Yes, exactly. We looked at the hard, undeniable math, the 0.978 correlation, proving that deep digital integration directly drives turnover. We built the exact architecture of the minimum viable stack: cloud accounting, an integrated CRM, digital inventory, and WhatsApp, all linked seamlessly through low-code visual triggers.
The MVS.
And we laid out the rigorous 90-day roadmap, starting with the absolute necessity of cleaning up the physical process before ever touching a piece of software.
It is a rigorous journey. It requires confronting the very real fears of data security and operational disruption. But the cost of remaining analog is simply too high.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to pivot to a broader philosophy that emerged from reading through these sources. We are constantly conditioned by the market to view technology through the lens of addition and flashiness.
More is better.
Right. We think progress means adding artificial intelligence, adding complex predictive models, adding more features. But for the MSMEs, the actual backbone of the economy, what is the true purpose of this digital transformation?
The most profound insight hidden in this research is that for this sector, the ultimate goal of technology is not addition, it is reduction.
Reduction.
Yes, the most powerful thing a digital operating system does is reduce ambiguity. It reduces the excruciating delay between shipping a product and getting paid. And most importantly, it reduces a fragile business's absolute reliance on the brute force effort and memory of its human operators.
So while the massive enterprises and the tech world are breathlessly chasing the next shiny algorithmic object, trying to build systems so complex nobody fully understands them.
The true winners over the next decade, the businesses that will actually capture that 81% return on investment, might be the ones who simply mastered the art of the boring.
I love that. Mastering the boring.
They're the founders who build quiet, invisible, reliable digital workflows that just keep the lights on, the inventory tracked, and the cash flowing without any drama.
The more boring your back office, the more resilient your profit margins. So I want to leave you, the listener, with this thought. Take a hard look at your own operational stack this week. Are you carrying a microwave up a mountain burdened by tech bloat? Or are you mastering the art of reduction?
Build the foundation first.
That's where the real depth is. Thanks for diving in with us.